About a few days ago, a week specifically, Digital Foundry put out a video asking why Alan Wake 2 has not been profitable. I guess it was a question from one of their audiences. And I think it's very critical that we point out a few reasons. Obviously, the game's not on Steam. Number one, when the game launched, it went for hardware specs that were above and beyond what a lot of PC gamers don't necessarily have available to them. I was talking just recently about the Steam hardware survey. That was a Twitter user, ZubiTech Pro, who's more pro PlayStation. He put it out there, and I think his goal was to basically disparage like the PC gaming industry. I don't know what his goals fully were, but from a comment I saw where he was talking about many of the PC gamers don't have 4090s, 80. I'm just like, yeah, this is just a console war theme going on. However, I've already said, and this is reality, that this data set is here for developers to be able to look at. For the team at Alan Wake 2 to decide that they were going to go ahead and release a game that came with a lot of hardware ray tracing features, mesh shaders, all of this stuff that pretty much neglected a good amount of GPUs when they could have made a game that worked like Control, which is a very steady benchmark game across the board. They could have used a similar setup, similar engine, all of that, which they have access to. They decided that they were going to go a different route. So we're going to look at Digital Foundry's response to that question, and we're going to see if there's some sort of correlation to what is going to be said here.
Alan Wake 2 still not making royalties. First time I've seen role playing appear in one of these questions. But let's crack on with the question. If this incredible game is not profitable after almost a year, how can any investor group take any reasonable bet on a $100 million game that isn't a live service money printer or an established and beloved franchise? I'd love to see more lower budget risks on original IP from major publishers, but the market at that level is also extremely saturated and tough to cut through. What is a major studio to do, Oliver?
Release their games on Steam. Release their games with hardware specification support that is available to most PC gamers. A data-driven approach to talking about video games and even looking at it is very important. The only reason you guys see me talking about these consoles and all that is because we have a lot of data available to us. If we didn't have this amount of data available to us, we would just be making conjecture all over the place, and we would have basically nothing that we can pretty much stand on when it comes down to it.
Oof. I mean, first of all, live service is very risky. If you're talking about making $100 million bet on a new title, obviously we've seen that with Concord recently and other titles. I think Alan Wake 2, it's a bit tricky because Alan Wake 2 is a sequel and arguably a less marketable sequel than the first game, which, from my understanding, was not a gigantic commercial success to begin with.
Yeah.
So it's not a gigantic
It was a risk,
surprise.
I think, Alan Wake 2.
Ultimately. Yeah, it was a risk.
It was a lot of risks. Many layers of risk.
It's not a gigantic surprise it didn't sell like 10 million copies, but at the same time, it is a great game, and it's unfortunate it has not sold enough to apparently clear its considerable
It probably
expenses.
will, I think, in the fullness of time.
In the fullness of time, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, it's only been out. It has a long tail, and it's only been out for, what, 10 months at this point?
Yep.
Maybe 11 months, because it came.
That's a long tail. I'm honestly shocked. A break-even point for a lot of these games that are, in the AAA space, I think within your first 3 months, you gotta break even and start earning significant profits. Because again, there's a tail end to this. This is, I think it was made in Unreal Engine, and so they're gonna be paying royalties because they probably already sold their first $1 million in sales. So that should be interesting because they sold over 1 million copies
in October, so not an eternity in terms of game sales, but I do think that Remedy has a certain style of game design and development that might not mesh super well with commercial expectations. Like if you look at Quantum Break, Alan Wake, Crossfire X's single player component, famously, which I took a look at back in the day, which you can no longer play, unfortunately. Some of those were more modest successes, but none were big hits. If they had been, perhaps we'd be talking about Quantum Break 3 right now instead of Alan Wake 2. I think Control has been more successful, but I think there is some danger with that in its upcoming sequel because Control is a very low budget game, and if you do increase that budget even to something like Alan Wake 2 levels, all of a sudden the commercial expectations become higher
Agreed. This dude's spitting game.
in a concurrent way with that, right? So you need to be careful with that stuff. So yeah, I think Alan Wake 2 is just it was a tough sell from the beginning. It's obviously something that was very surprising when they announced it, that it was even going to be a project. Certainly a very exciting game, certainly a very well executed game, but a kind of game where you could kind of see it was probably not going to be the greatest of commercial successes from the outset.
Yeah. John, thoughts?
Yeah, I think they also kind of made their own bed there a little bit. So obviously Epic was the publisher and they obviously funded it. So I understand why, but I think not being on Steam was a huge problem.
Finally, I was thinking the elephant in the room was not going to be spoken about.
And I think not having day one physical versions was another huge problem.
That's also a challenge, man. You see, gamers right now are very picky as to how and where they spend their money. If you're doing a physical release, if you're doing a big release like this, physical copies can really change the game for you. I mean, even if you sold 100,000 physical copies in like the first week, that is a very, very good way to signal to physical hardware stores across the spectrum that, hey man, this is probably a game we need to stock up on. And people walk into GameStop, they're looking through the shelves, they're looking through the stands on the different consoles, Xbox, PlayStation. Sometimes you go to a GameStop, they have a PC little spot too. I bought a 1500X 3D in a GameStop. I've been wanting that CPU for the longest time. Just one of those things. And I saw it in a GameStop, even after it was discontinued by AMD. And people like those physical media that walk in there. They see a game like that. They're like, what is this? There's a likelihood that they are now knowledgeable about a game like Alan Wake. And more than likely, some of them might just be in a position where they say, let me try it out. You see what I mean? And so you now have that aspect to your game in that regard. But when your game is like digital, maybe GameStop will advertise it, they'll put a card right there, Alan Wake 2 card. A lot of people are probably not into that. They'd rather just buy it on the, in the storefront if they wanted a digital version for it.
I think those two things together probably killed a lot of those potentially initial sales they could have had. Right? Like, first, I know a lot of people that did not buy it because it wasn't on disc right away. And then by the time they finally get that version, it almost feels like too little too late. You know what I mean? Like they've missed the buzz cycle. And in addition, the Epic Game Store just isn't like, it's a Fortnite portal for a lot of people still. And I just don't think you get that kind of sales. I think being on Steam would have made a gigantic difference for them.
Yeah.
Epic Games, and this is the problem. And ladies and gentlemen, hear me out. Exclusivity and Epic Games' approach to try to, lure people to its store using exclusive games has not been effective. In fact, I think the very first lesson learned here, and I bought Alan Wake 2. I got it on sale. I don't know why. They're probably going to give it away for free next Christmas or something. I don't know. Right? And the lesson learned, they gave away Sifu for free just recently. Kingdom Come Deliverance. I barely buy these games, bro. Like, yeah, this year I bought 2 games on Epic. I got this for the kids because they beat the other Shredder's Revenge already. They beat it like 3 times. So, Dad got this one for them. They don't know it's cooking yet. So hopefully next game day, which is actually hopefully this weekend, they'll get this one unleashed so they can all play. And, call it what you want. I play Gotham Knights on here because, this is another version of Gotham Knights that I was curious. I wanted to play a PC version that wasn't the Xbox PC version, so I got it here for cheap. But you can tell that this is kind of a, it doesn't have that emphasis on its store. Epic is busy. They're busy with Unreal Engine, so they're not going to be investing too much money on here. Yes, it's going to have the bare minimum functionality, online play, blah, 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 blah. But, again, some people have that notion that this is just a Fortnite, portal. And, John's right here.
And those two factors right there probably had a pretty nasty impact on their success.
Yeah, that's really tricky because it's difficult to underestimate the kind of hatred there is for the Epic Game Store amongst
Right.
us.
It's not difficult to underestimate. A lot of its users are gamers that are from Steam. It's developers that are, that are loving Epic Games Store, because we never even ever almost, you know, when you're making a game, you're not playing many video games. So you ain't sitting out here like, oh, my Epic Games library. You open Epic Games, it goes straight to Unreal Engine. You open your library. If I click this library, my NDA myself, but you go in your library and you have like, you know, all kinds of stuff and game projects and stuff. Then you have like all your, you know, your, whatchamacallit, you know, your assets and all of that stuff. You can go to Fab, which is the, you know, asset marketplace and all of that. Man, this ain't, you know, it's not designed for all that. With that regard, they're giving away this stuff for free. What is this? Featured content. I need to come in here to see if they still do free stuff like they did every month for Epic Games. But anyways, I think they don't set it all. I don't think there's anything else that we have here to even add to this, because this already, you know, this already makes the common sense argument that at the end of the day, you know, when you're launching a game that it has a lot of risk attached to it, you know, you gotta be marketably appealing and marketably available. This is where we even see PlayStation and Xbox, you know, contending for what's going on. But let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys' time and audience. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.